I've been making guitars since 2003, and I've cut a lot of rosettes in that time, and I've used rudimentary tools, handmade tools. I've seen 3 versions of the StewMac router bass. I've seen Dremel basses, other handmade basses, and they all do a pretty good job, and they're all fairly similar. And then something new came along.
This is the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter by Chris Ensor at Elevate Luthier. It is a beautiful piece of engineering, really heavy, solid CNC machined aluminum. And in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use it, why it's good, why it's a step up in every way from probably the industry standard, I would say, which is the Rosette cutter from Stuart McDonald. There's a big difference, and those differences are important. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to mention about the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter is how sturdy it is. This is about 1/4 inch thick aluminum. This is about 1 inch thick. Everything has been precision machined, and it has a Acme threaded insert here with a micrometer knob here, which you can dial in just a couple of thousandths of an inch in or out to really accurately widen your circle or whatever shape that you're cutting, but let's stick to circles. It also has a huge range of circle cutting diameters. So the smallest it can cut is 2 inches, and if you slide this out and spin it around, it has the ability to cut, depending on cutting diameter, 26 inches. So a 26-inch circle. That's a big sound hole in a guitar, but it has furniture making possibilities and whatever else you can think of that has a 26 or smaller circle that needs to be routed. And I should point out this pivoting thingy that sticks on the back. These 2 posts ride through the holes here, and on this side where there's the 2 knobs, there's a 1/4 moon plate that raises and lowers to lock it in place. It's really well engineered. Just make sure they're down when you try and put this back in, because it can be, a few times I've put it in, I'm like, what's going on? But it was just because the little plates aren't fully seated down. And sometimes the little plate can spin around if you take it out. So just, give it a look inside if this isn't just sliding straight on. I should point out quickly that while this is called a circle cutter, it can not only do just a simple circle, but also these elliptical circles, for lack of a better word, which you can get by using 2 pivot points like there. And you can also do some really nice segmented rosettes. You just require some fancy chisel work to accomplish all those. It's designed to be used with a mini plunge router, and the main 3 in the industry are Makita, the Bosch Colt, which I don't have, and the one that I bought to dedicate to this is the DeWalt. The reason why I didn't buy another Makita, the DeWalt has some LED lights just in here, which will really come in handy for routing. It's something that the Makita doesn't have. The plunge mechanism of this router is also nice and smooth. It also has a lock, but you have to have this engaged to slide it up and down and to release it. So it's a nice little feature. It also has a soft start, which is what you want in any router, no matter how big the size. And the bottom of the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter is pre-drilled to accept the bases from the Bosch Colt, the DeWalt, and the Makita. I'll leave a link in the description to those 3 routers that Chris recommends. I haven't used the Bosch one. I think that does actually have an LED light as well, but I just went for the DeWalt one. So the next thing to do is just take off this Perspex part from the bottom here and bolt it to this. To make it a bit easier on how to figure out where to put the router, Chris has labeled the bottom according to which holes to use for various brands. It's really easy to locate. I'm going to mount this with the cable going away from me like that. I recommend doing the same. Don't tighten any of these screws up yet. You just want to get them all in place before you tighten them up, because you want a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that everything's fitting. So a few reasons why to put this cord in this configuration going out. It gets it out of the way and it's easier to handle than when it's forward like this. Sometimes with the StewMac router base, the Dremels that go into it, they kind of lock in place in an awkward way and the cord's towards you, and it's surprisingly annoying. Another thing is that the on-off switch is basically always going to be facing you, and the depth stop, which is here, is facing you as well, so it's easy to get a quick and easy depth and reference, and you can use this in various ways, which I'll show you. So there's a few ways this is far better and more accurate than the StewMac version. One is that it's precision ground and it is handmade with really, really tight tolerances. The other thing is that the sheer weight of it makes vibrations which will happen absolutely with a Dremel in this. It basically makes them obsolete. So one of the major advantages that the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter has over the StewMac version is how rigid it is. With this by itself, just the precision cutter, was weighty, and with the plunge router, it's actually pretty heavy. And what that equates to is loss of vibration. And when you have a Dremel in here, and this is like 1/8 of an inch thick, when you're routing around, this thing starts to shake and you introduce vibrations. And then when you're cutting sort of downhill along the end grain of a circle, you can get chatter marks. So you don't get a nice clean cut, you can just tell that the router bit is wobbling because of all the vibration in this. So that is one huge advantage that you have of the StewMac base with the Elevate version. It's rock solid, it's really weighty, and that does work to your advantage. It's like, when you have a milling machine or something, you want the heaviest version of it you can find and can afford, because you'll get more precision cutting with the heavier mass. Another advantage which kind of builds on that is these take a 1/4 inch router bit. So the trouble with the StewMac base that it only held a Dremel or rotary tool from whatever brand, and they only accept small bits that have a 1/8 diameter. So when you're dealing with a 1/8 diameter bit, you get deflection in the bit if you're routing hard materials, any hardwood like ebony or African blackwood or whatever, but even in spruce. And when you have deflection, and it might only be a tiny bit, but it means a difference between a rosette that looks perfect and one that doesn't look perfect. And when you're charging 10 grand a guitar or higher or whatever, even if you're charging $3,000 for a guitar, it should be perfect. So with this, you get the extra weight and mass of the body and the router, plus the 1/4 inch collet. And you can actually, I think, change these to 1/2 inch maybe, depends on what brand. But the 1/4 inch collet, they are so much stiffer. So when you've got a bit with a 1/4 inch shaft and just a small cutting area, you've got maximum rigidity in the bit. And it means when you're going from softwood like spruce into, say ebony or African blackwood or Brazilian rosewood, you're not getting weird deflections because the router bit is trying to follow the path of least resistance in the spruce. So it's a hidden and really important aspect of this whole system, using a small plunge router. So I have 4 main router bits to use with this system, and these 4 would be the ones to buy if you are investing in this. The first one, the main one for hogging out everything, is going to be a 1/4 inch up or down cut spiral bit, and I'll be using that first in this demonstration. The next one is a 1/8 bit, a little bit smaller. The next 2 are getting small, and again, these are 1/4 inch shafts. This is a 1/16 bit, and this little fellow is 1/32. It's really, really small. So if you plan on using the 1/32 bit a lot, you probably want to buy 2 or 3, because if anything's going to break, it's this one. But the 1/16 is actually going to be a rather important bit, because that is about 60 thousandths of an inch wide, and 60 thousandths is a typical purfling black, white, black, 20 thou each of black, white, black. I'm going to be utilizing that 1/16 router bit and the 1/32 router bit throughout this video with the 2 rosettes, because I've got a few tricks up my sleeve which will help you get a really nice fitting rosette. It's a fail-safe method you can't screw up, and you get an absolutely perfect result every time. That's the way I do it. There's an even better 5th router bit, which I don't have. It's the 3/64 bit, which is about 46 thou. Unfortunately, these only seem to come in 1/8 bits, so you have to buy a adapter collet from StewMac, and StewMac sell the adapter collet and the router bit itself. The benefits of a 46 thou router bit is you can get a super tight fit with a 60 thou black, white, black, because every router has some run out, and a 62 thou router bit might, cut at 70 thou. So all the bits that I've got are up or down cut spiral bits. The 1/8 one isn't. It's just because the local store that I bought this from didn't have one. But if you can get a spiral bit, get a spiral bit instead of these double flute ones, but this is going to be fine. And again, I'll put links in the description of where I got all these router bits. I don't know much about router bit brands and stuff. I know Whiteside is good. If you're in a pinch, the one that you can get is the best one. So, okay, that brings me to the last thing I want to talk about, and that is the pivoting mechanism that this uses. Pivot! The circle cutter comes with 3 1/4-inch holes which correspond with the 1/4-inch pin, and they're spaced 1 inch apart. And you can use any of these holes to quickly jump to make a bigger or smaller circle instead of using the knobs. I asked Chris to custom mill me 2 extra holes in between the 1/4-inch holes, and those holes are 3/16 of an inch. Can you guess why? Because 3/16 is the size that the StewMac cutter uses to pivot. You saw at the start of the video how many of these StewMac router bases that I have. I thought it would be a good idea to leave the option open to use both the precision circle cutter from Elevate and the StewMac base. For some reason, I don't think I'm going to do it like typically. I'll just be using this because it's got all the elements that this has, but better and more accurate. But I did want to have that option open. I can foresee that it's going to be easier to grab a Dremel for either hogging out something or something that doesn't require as precise a cut, and keep the finer bits in this one. I'm not sure yet, but I think having the 2 hole options is going to be beneficial. So putting the router bit in, embed the router bit as deep as you can put it, because that means that the less router bit that's exposed, the less deflection can happen, even though it's minute with 1/4-inch bits. But also if there's any sort of run out in the router, so run out is, and by run out I mean, pretend that's a router bit. If the collet isn't, precision mill, the router bit is going to be doing this, so like that, instead of directly where it should be in the center. And the more the router bit extends out past where it's inserted into the collet, the more large the router bit is cutting. So I've seen cheap laminated trimmers where you put a 1/4-inch bit in and you cut a straight line, and the groove, instead of being 1/4 of an inch thick, it's like 30 thousandths wider than 1/4 of an inch, and that's just because of the router bit doing this instead of just spinning directly where it should. So stick the router bit as far up as you can. So the router bit is in there. There's a yellow button here on this particular one that locks the collet from spinning. This comes with a really nice, really solid spanner, or wrench if you're in America. The ones from Harbor Freight, they're like 1/16 of an inch thick and they just bend. They're absolutely pathetic, but this is really thick. I like it. Okay, so to get going you need a backing board, and this is a piece of melamine, really nice, clean. It's all I do on this. It's not going to mar the surface of the top at all. There's a 3/16 hole drilled in here. That's for the StewMac router base. The 1/4 inch hole is for the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter, and the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter, which is really long, that's the last time I'm going to say it, it comes with a 1/4 inch piece of metal. I'm going to have to order a new one because I'm never going to find that. 1/4 inch wide by, I don't know, it's about an inch long piece of metal. And that just goes in there. Another important thing about the baseboard, when you're drilling the hole, use a drill press just so you get a really accurate vertical hole, because if the hole isn't vertical, then this won't sit vertical. And if it's leaning over at all, it makes it difficult to turn the router and also take it out. It'll just bind up, so just make sure you get that straight down. You also need a top. This is a nice bit of Western red cedar that has a 1/4 inch hole drilled into it, exactly in the center of where the sound hole is going to be. So now I'm ready to route for the classical guitar rosette, which I bought because it looks like Lord of the Rings mountains. So before I start routing for the rosette, I'm going to have to find out where I've got to route for the rosette and how wide. So I'm going to just take this pin out, and I've got to place the rosette as accurately as I can in the center. I've also got this, I don't know what you call it, circle maker, drawer, compass thing, and it's really good for figuring out how wide this is and, you know, measuring it all out. If you don't have one of these, and honestly it's probably still easier just to use a ruler, just measure the inside, and you can use your eyes just to measure accurately enough the widest part, which is going to be the center of the rosette, and that's 90 mil from this edge to this edge. So if I just get the center of the 1/4 inch hole on 45 mils and then mark exactly there, that will be the inside of the rosette, so I can then place the rosette to those lines and get the outside. So now I've got 2 lines here, and I can excavate this whole area here in the middle. But having said that, of course, you want to be really careful. We've got the lines which are like, I would call them 70% accurate, those lines. So what I'm going to do is hog out most of it, staying away from the lines, like by 30-second or something, then slowly come in using the micrometer on the back of the Elevate Precision Circle Cutter and really get this inside perfect. Then once I've got that, then I can do the same thing for the outside. There was a slight problem that I found early on, and it's easy to remedy. It had to do with the router base itself, not the Elevate base, the router base. So this part just here, this part just here, it interfered with the 1/4 inch pin. So this problem was when I put the pin in the baseboard and put this on the pin was too high and it just hit the router base itself. And so what I did to compensate or combat that problem was 2 things. The first one was I drilled all the way through the baseboard and into my bench. And so what happened when I did that was the pin didn't stick out as tall, because it really only needs to be sticking out as tall as the 1/4 inch circular base area here. A little bit higher just for safety, but that's all that is required. Another good thing about drilling all the way through and into the bench is when you're spinning this baseboard doesn't spin as well. Well, it can spin, but it doesn't. The other thing, the main thing I did, was I actually got 2 files, and I filed a little trench into this little area here, and so that just gives me a little bit of extra clearance for the pin if it's sticking out further higher than the this circular area. So I'm looking at my other big routers. They have a full circle for the base as well, so I would say it's on every router. I would assume is on the Bosch as well. It's not a problem, it's just like they don't make these routers envisioning Luthiers putting them on Elevate
rosette cutters. But this is aluminum, the router base, so it's really easy to file. It took me 20 seconds, so easy peasy. So now I can, move this freely from the minimum 2 inches to whatever the biggest rosette size I ever cut. So easy, not a problem. Just file away the aluminum and you'll be right. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to basically hog away the excess that I've cross-hatched with a pencil, so it's just really easy to see what's going on. If you have bad eyesight or something, use a white pencil, or this is usually covered up by the fingerboard end, so you can use a Sharpie or something if you want, but it just depends on what instrument you're making. Sometimes I've done guitars where the fingerboard isn't covering this area of the rosette, so you've got to be careful. Another important thing to watch out for, and when I taught at Gelée Guitars, I saw students either do this or almost do this. I just assume people think about this, but people don't think about stuff sometimes. Make sure that the widest part of the router bit is facing towards the line that you want to route up to. So a spiral router bit, it's obviously 1/4 of an inch round. This one's 1/4 of an inch round, but the cutting parts are kind of in a line. And so if you don't think about that and you index it to the area of space or negative space, when you turn on the router, you'll get that negative space plus the cutter bit, and you'll basically route too big a hole. So be careful of that. So for instance, this looks pretty good, like I'm about to cut to that line, but if I spin the router bit, it's obvious that I was about to cut way too big, way too far past the line. So just be careful of the orientation of the router bit. Don't do it like that, start like that, or index like that. So the first procedure is to place the router on the top and then drop the router down carefully so the router bit is just touching the surface of the top. Now with that router bit touching the top, drop this depth thing down to where it stops. I don't know the names for all these things. Then get whatever rosette you're using, place that there, tighten it up, and now you've got the amount that the router bit has to drop down further in order to seat this or whatever rosette perfectly. So when the router is in place, Chris Ensor on the video on his website talking about the circle cutter, he mentions that it's because of the weight of the entire thing, it's a little bit tricky to push it in and out, but if you just lift it up a tiny bit, then it's pretty effortless to slide it back and forth. So just remember that. Okay, so I'm just sliding this back, so I've got about the router bit is about 1 millimeter away, 32nd away from the line that I drew, which was a rough line. And then when you've got it set where you want, just tighten up both of these main knobs here, and that just means that I can't slide this in and out anymore. It's not the time to use the micro adjuster. That will come after I route out the majority of it. Okay, so it's time to route the first route. Eye protection, ear protection. I'm looking forward to seeing how good the light is on this. Just make sure everything's locked up. Make sure the pin is in place, because if the pin, if it drops down too far or rides up or something, then the router can go anywhere. Just use your brain. Slow start or soft start, which is really nice. I'm just going to raise this up a tiny bit, and having that depth stop is really handy. Then I'll just loosen these two and move the router bit back, and then take another cut. So when I'm not filming, I usually just leave the router bit on and undo these and then just move it forward while the router bit's going. But because I'm filming and playing it safe, or showing you how to do it the safest way, stop the router
wait for it to stop, raise it up a bit, move this back into the new position, and then keep going. So this is the last cut for the inside, and after I take this cut, I'll remove the router and just check where I am with the actual rosette. Start the router with the bit a little bit off the surface, and then plunge down. You saw me sort of fighting with the cord a little bit. That just is what happens when you rotate something. I actually want to get a power outlet in the ceiling so this cord just goes straight up and I don't have to deal with that. One day. So let's talk about these two knobs here. When both of them are loose, you can move the entire thing in and out, or the router in and out, to make a smaller or larger circle. When you lock this first one down, you can't move the router in or out, but you can, with this back one loosened, you can still move the micrometer in and out, but it's only this part here. It's just it's not affecting the depth of the distance of the router bit away from, you know, whatever part that you're trying to sneak up to. So to engage the micrometer, you need to loosen this and tighten the micrometer, and now I can move this in and out, affecting the depth of the cut to sneak up to the line. Again, the weight of the thing and the mass, it basically means that you can't just freehand this with one hand. You've got to raise this up just very, very slightly, like a 64th, just wedge it up a tiny bit, and then you can visually see where you are until you are close enough to the line to where you think you should make the next cut. Just, you know, remember to lift this up with one hand and adjust the micrometer with the other one. And then when you're ready to route again, just make sure you lock both of these knobs off here. Also, when you're creeping up to the line, make sure the router bit is orientated so the widest part is facing the line, you know, like I described before. Let's sneak up to the line, tighten up everything, next cut. So I'm just fitting this rosette, which I got from LMI. LMI, before they went out of business, unfortunately going out of business, that is, they sold these really nice Russian rosettes. The trouble is, these old Russian rosettes, classical guitar rosettes, they buckle and they warp, and it's really difficult to get a perfect circle out of them, or to put these in a perfect circle and make it work. So I can get the outside fitting nicely, but the inside, it's just all over the place. Nothing to do with the cut that I made or anything, it's just they're not a perfect circle. And normally you can do some creative scraping. If it's tight on one side, you can just scrape that away a little bit, but it's kind of too far beyond that. So it actually is good because it will allow me to demonstrate what to do in that situation, which is what I was going to do with the second rosette, but I get to do it here. And that is, I'm going to glue this in, and then once it's dry, tomorrow I'll come back and change the router bit to the 1/32 router bit and recut perfectly the inner black, and then inlay another piece of black veneer to get a perfect circle. So I'm actually glad this has happened for this video, because it's a good demonstration on how to fix things that aren't round that you're trying to put in a perfect circle. That's life. That's Luthiery. So with a little help of this cedar wedge, I can get this in there, and I'm more focusing on the outside, and so now the outside is nice and tight, but I can get a little 6-inch ruler in there, but it's tight over here, it's super tight here, it's like perfect fitting here. So, you know, it's all over the place. So that's just what you get when you order old thin rosettes that I mean, they're not stable. These rosettes, classical guitar rosettes, they're often just end grain, and it's a miracle that they stay in what's visually a circle, let alone like a perfect scientific circle. So I'm just going to glue this in with hide glue and wait till tomorrow until it's cured. And I was going to use a 1/32 bit, but it's very small and I don't think that's going to be wide enough, so I might actually go up to the 1/16, which suits me fine, because if you can use a wider router bit, it's safer, less breakage and stuff like that. So I'll just glue this in and wait for tomorrow and reroute. So I have this Hercules brand heating gun, and when you turn it on, you can see that I can dial in a specific temperature if I want. Very handy. I've got a piece of plywood here, wax paper, then the top, which I'm heating up, which is a good thing to do for hide glue. The pot is just here. Heating up the surfaces that you're going to glue with hide glue just gives you a longer open time. And that little keystone here, I just glued that in with a tiny drop of CA glue, but I was careful not to get the CA glue near the end grain of the rosette. So I have another bit of wax paper here and another bit of flat plywood. I'm going to size it a little bit on the outside with hide glue, just because, and then it's all very messy. Let's let that sit overnight.
Not long ago, good love was hard to find. Not long ago, we were the losing kind. Won't hang our head in sorrow the way we done before, 'cause you're the one that I've been searching for. Time goes slow when you're up all through the night. Through darkness we'll go to greet the morning light. Won't waste away tomorrow, we're stepping out the door, 'cause you're the one that I've been searching for.
Okay, so this is a second top Adirondack spruce, torrefied Adirondack spruce with ebony rosette. So what you wouldn't have been able to see here, I purposefully cut this channel too big because I'm going to do a different technique for this rosette. There's 3 ways to go about this. There's cutting the ring and then adding or gluing the black, white, black purfling around it and on the inside, and then gluing that in all in one. That's the first way. The second way is to fit this with the black, white, black purfling on the inside and outside and cut the channel to accommodate everything, then glue it all in at once. Then there's the way I'm doing it, which is this will ensure a perfect fit. It is to cut the channel slightly larger on the outside and inside than the wooden ring, then glue that in, let it dry overnight, then come back in tomorrow and use a 1/16 wide router bit and reroute the inside and outside. and 1/16 corresponds to the 60th thou wide black, white, black. So you can see here how much space I've got. It's obviously way too large, but that relieves a little bit of pressure on the router bit for tomorrow. When I glue this down, I'm only going to apply glue to the bottom of this. I'm not going to fill up this crevice because I want the walls to remain glueless so the router bit doesn't gum up tomorrow. And I'm actually going to just brush on some Type Bond for this just because it's easier. So I've just got a bit of wax paper here. The only consideration I need to think about when I glue this on is just to center it fairly well. That's all. I'll fill this area in later. It's not important, it's under the fingerboard. I'll just let that tack up for a couple of minutes. I'm just going to brush away some of the glue that I can see. That's effectively what I'm doing with the classical guitar Rosette as well. That was out of necessity because it wasn't round. This actually was very round, and I could have done either of the other two ways to pre-glue the black, white, black on, or just to do it all in one hit. But I just wanted to show how good it is and how nice it is to have such a sturdy router base. And when you're dealing with router bits that have 1/4 of an inch thick a shaft, it just makes the chatter just non-existent. When I was routing this, almost 1/8 inch thick, it's about 110 thou I think, because I cut it out of the back. But when I was routing that, if I tried to do that with a Dremel, I would have had to have done at least 3 passes, probably maybe 4. But I could have done it in 1 with that, but I ended up doing it in 2. With a new spiral bit and the mass and the sturdiness of that and the power of the lamb trimmer, man, I did not get any chatter at all. It just was super smooth, absolutely beautiful. So that is tacked up now. Now I'm just going to put a weight on it. Old number 7. That's it. So wait for tomorrow. It's the next day and I've sanded the tops down so the rosettes are flush with the top. They're a bit under and over. The classical one, which I thought was going to be way worse, it actually turned out better than I thought. I'm still going to do the original plan, which is to reroute the inner black line with the 16th bit, but it's I was looking at it, it's pretty close. I could probably shift over the black with a razor blade and make it look fine, but for the sake of being profesh, I'll do what's proper. Even though this is a guitar for myself. The steel string, this is a 00 12 fret with the ebony rosette. It's looking good. I just cleaned out, there was a few little hard pockets that had collected in the gaps just of Type Bond, so I just cleaned them out with a scalpel blade. It's not exactly centered within the trough that I routed out, but that's fine because the 60th thou is just going to catch everything and it's going to look even. So I've already put in the 16th router bit and I've pushed it up as far as I can go, and so there's going to be least amount of wobble as possible. Another thing I've done on both of these, which I didn't do before, I should have mentioned it before, but I didn't because I knew the procedure I was going to do, but I put a coat of shellac just on the spruce. It minimizes tear out and stuff like that. I didn't do it before because I knew that I was going to be doing demonstrations like has progressed, i.e. inlaying black, white, blacks after I inlay the rosette. So the outer and inner edges didn't have to be perfect, but if you're just going to inlay something, a rosette, straight away and not do this outer and inner black, white, blacks as a secondary measure like I'm doing, then hit it with some 1 pound cut shellac. It does help minimize some tear out, and also of course use brand new router bits or sharp router bits as often as possible. That brand new downcut spiral bit, 1/4 inch, that was cutting absolutely perfectly. I'm still really impressed by how little wobble I get out of that router and how sturdy the base is and how it feels. I was turning it one-handed without any trouble, whereas the StewMac one, you've got to really hold it in place with both hands and just kind of pay attention to what's going on, otherwise you'll get chatter and stuff. It's horrible compared to that, to be honest. And so with this, the trick is to get the router bit so it's intersecting the spruce and the black. So if the black inner line of the rosette's here and the spruce is here, you want the router bit, which is this thick, to kind of intersect both of them, so you're just cutting both. And you want the router bit to be just a tiny, tiny bit above the spruce, or cedar in this case. Again, orientate the router bit so the widest part is facing the job. And then spin the entire thing and make sure that the router bit is going to catch and intersect everything that you want and doesn't cut into anything you don't want. So next to this black line is a really thin green line, and I do not want to cut into that. I think where it is now I'm going to cut into it, so I'll move it back a touch. Because what I mentioned before, these old classical guitar rosettes, they're rarely round, and normally you've got to do some creative scraping or something, but this is pretty good. But I just got to be super careful that I'm not going to be cutting into anything I don't want. If you find or see a place that it's going to cut into anything that you don't want, then just move it forward or back. The worst case scenario is you can't win either way, and in that case you just have to do the best you can. Basically, you have to not touch any other colored line, because that will be obvious. But if you make the inner or the outer or any line a bit thicker than usual, it won't matter, unless you have like a 1 inch thick line or something. But so if I have to make this inner line, 10 thou thicker than it already is, it won't throw off the eye, which is the main thing. But I think I've positioned it good. It's good. Time to route. Okay, drop this down and then raise it up a bit.
Old man on the corner, selling pencils from a cup. Big man giving out orders, turns to us, says, listen up. Oh, we're gonna die here.
So that all went well. I didn't touch the green line, which is nice, and there's a fairly even black line still there. I did just touch or impede into the green, but there's like some black residue, so I didn't actually cut into the green, which is good. All right, inlay the black line again, and then we're done. So the time has come, finally. I'm just using some LMI glue, the last bottle I have, and I've kind of been using interchangeably throughout the video black, white, black, and black lines. This rosette requires black lines, and this is actually the second half of this rosette that I'm doing. This is the outer edge. You can see I've already done the inner edge, and it requires 3 black lines of 20 thou each to make it good. Then I just harden it up with some CA glue. The keen-eyed of you might be wondering why I put black on the outside as well as the inside when I only had a small gap on the inside. Well, that was to even out the image of it, and there you can see that it's even and perfect. Instead of talking through the second rosette, I thought I'd just show you my process of finishing up a top. All this part is the same. There I am checking that the router bit's going to hit both the top and the rosette and the routing, but it's the next part which is the interesting part. I'm just going to inlay some typical 60 thou black, white, black. I thought the classical rosette was more interesting to show than this one, which was, quite straightforward. Unfortunately, when things go wrong, it makes for a better instructional video, so there you go. So now I sand the rosette side of the top flush and only the rosette side, and those sanding grits are about 80 grit sandpaper marks, and they're pretty deep, and I'm about to find out exactly how deep. And the top is about 140 thou. So what I do here is I sand progressively from 80 grit up to 320 grit just on the top surface. And why I do that is because I don't want to have deep scratches on both the inside and outside of the top and then have to remove them, which can be problematic. I can go too thin, so if you only do one side and finish sand it, you minimize the potential risk by exactly 50%. So this is an interesting part. You've got to be careful when you're sanding a top because the ebony is a different density to the spruce, and you can get a slightly raised area on the ebony, so I'm just flattening that.
and now it's perfectly flat. And when I flip it over, you'll see the difference in surfaces between the inside and the outside of the top. So now the face of the top is completely done. Then I give it another measurement to see where I am, and I did lose some.
I lost about 10 thou just sanding the top. It's about 130.
So I'm now at 130 thou, which is still too thick for the guitar I'm making. So now I'll sand the back down to approximately where I want. Pretend that's the back, that's the inside. I didn't film it, so I had to use the same footage. And now I am cutting out the shape of the guitar, which is a 0012 fret. My target thickness for a 0012 fret, this is a Torified Adirondack top. It's going to be about 105, 110 thou. But that depends on the particular piece of wood that you have in your hand and, whatever else you've got in mind bracing wise. So did I mention to like and subscribe? I don't think I did. Well, like and subscribe, comment, all that sort of thing. But do stick around for the ending, which is only a few minutes away, where I show you my favorite part of this whole process. See you next time. Another 2 guitars on their way, and my favorite part of doing this, making a rosette and cutting them out, is to do this part. It's to add these discs, which I always say who it's for and the top species and stuff, but now I get to put them both on my disc tower, I suppose you call it. These are, I think, most of the instruments that I've made in America. I probably have, well, if I did this back in Australia, I would have had probably this plus another one of those, because I did lots of Gillet guitars and student guitars. But yeah, that is one of my favorite parts of this job. Simple, maybe, but it is a fun thing to watch this tower eventually get maybe as tall as me. Yeah, I could do that in my lifetime, in my career. But until then, I will hang it up there so you can all watch it grow as I continue to keep doing videos. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something. The Elevate Precision Circle Cutter / Rosette Cutter, it's really good. I love it. It's the mass of it, the weight of it, and the ability to have the 1/4-inch bits. It just sets it apart from the StewMac ones. And the StewMac ones did their job for my career, 20 years, but I'll be using that one from now on. Mostly. I'll still be using the other ones for detail work, like inlays and stuff like that, but that one's for rosettes. So, thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.